Hey, what's going on YouTube? And welcome to this week's episode of Tuesday Preppers, where we take a look at the in-game news for Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, see what kind of content is coming out, and get ready for it by talking about units and gear and materia and killers and things like that that you can use to go and get in the game right now to get you ready for that content. This week, really the only content that we're getting is Clash of Wills. So whenever that happens, we do kind of like a bigger video where we talk a lot about like team building for Clash of Wills. And we'll go over a lot of units that can provide you with killers and elemental support buffs and things like that. That are going to help you kind of get ready for building a team, as well as showing you some sample teams that I think may work for you if you have them, as well as talk about some substitutions for those as well. So without further ado, let's get into it. If you watch the live stream, you know that Clash of Wills actually has a lot of changes that are coming out this month. More units are getting focus abilities during Mania mode. More units are getting Vertex abilities during Mania mode. Focus energy now grants more focus. Chance time has been extended by 3 turns, or 2 turns, so now a total of 3. And there's more details down below. So let's look at the boss. There's supposed to be a sprite here, but there's no sprite here. This is glorious. But let's take a look at what we need to know, right? So it's a dragon avian fairy. Obviously, it's an invisible dragon avian fairy. It's weak to water, wind, ice, and light. It uses fire, water, wind, and light, and non-elemental physical attacks and hybrid attacks. Inflicts you with blind, does fractional damage, reduces your healing, and counters if you don't deal certain elements. We don't really know what that means yet, but we assume it's gonna be like hit me with fire and you hit it with fire, whatever. Hopefully it'll be pretty clear and easy to understand for people. These kinds of things usually get really confusing for players, so I hope they make it relatively easy to follow. Especially because like when the boss has 500 actions a turn, it's really easy to miss that cue of like what you need to do. So make sure you're paying attention. You get bonus morale for reducing ice, water, wind, or light resistance for the enemy, once per status per unit per turn. Um, and then the morale bonus that you get is a boost to all the resistances that we need. And there you go. So let's talk a little bit about what you might want to bring to help you get ready for a dragon, avian, and fairy enemy. As usual, we've got a list going, and we worked on this on stream tonight, putting together a list of all the units that you might want to bring to get you ready for it. So in terms of fairy and spirit killer, we've had fairy or spirit killer before with the Chow event. So we already had a lot of units that are on this list. That said, we did make some additions. We're going to start with just the fact that Ihana's STMR allows you to cast a spirit killer buff on anybody, as long as they can use that item. Bulwark and the Melodic Mascots has a buff. Dynast King Scion Ash has a buff. Sakura Dark Lineage has a buff. It's single target only. Albed Girl Riku has a buff that's AoE, but you have to have a high EX level Riku. Blue Mage Fina, who everybody can get to EX3, has a Spirit Killer buff. Tidebringer Kaito has a great Spirit Killer buff, but only in morale battles, which this is a morale battle, so Tidebringer Kaito is fantastic here. Divine Beast Chow, which is the old original Chow, has a self-only buff. Richt has a self buff. Ibarra, like the original Ibarra, not the new Ibarra. The new Ibarra does too, but it's like self only. Guardian Chow, Guardian of the Underworld Chow has a buff that you cast on somebody else, but it buffs Chow and that person, which is nice. Regis is an NVA that has a self or a party buff, which is like better than nothing, because Regis also has Focus Plus. We're gonna talk about that in a little bit. Vacation Voyager Fina has a party buff at 150 for all allies, but Vacation Voyager Fina does not fall into the categories that you need to get a focus. So she's kind of, other than the fact she does water damage too, maybe not the best choice here. And same thing with Grand Couture Ayaka. She has a Fairy Killer buff as well, but she's an Earth unit, so you really don't want to bring her. It has been a while since we've had a new category, and we have not had dragon on our categories yet since we started making these lists. So here's the list of dragon killer units. Tidebringer Kaito. So notice Kaito is on fairy and dragon. Really good unit here. Princess Sarah has a 250 single target. Roberta Ignitos has a party buff. Sky has self damage, self buff for dragon killer. Curse of Immunity Melissa has a big single target buff with party buff. Fina Dark Lineage does as well. White Mage Rosa has a single target buff. Ibarra has a self buff. This is like the new Ibarra. Ihana has a Dragon Killer buff. Vilk has a self buff and a party buff, but Vilk is terrible. General Celeste has a 160 party buff, as well as a lower 100 version for birds and dragons. So she could be potentially useful here, but you don't really need a magic tank. But if you're bringing in, like, you could bring her for an ice team, maybe. Lastwell and Reagan has a Dragon Killer buff. Sharpshooter Irvin has a self buff, which is really nice. And Wild Rose Furion technically has a buff for the party, but it's pretty small. But Furion's an NVA. If you're looking for units that have killers, Wild Rose Furion is there. Wild Rose Furion is also on Avian. But some other examples for Avian bird killer is like Fina the Return, General Celeste, Wings of Midnight Malphasie, Bulwark again, Mid, Nora, Lightning Fast Zidane, Sakura Dark Lineage, Lara Croft has a self buff, Beach Blaster Olive has a self buff, Locke Neovision, that's the old Locke, has one. Veritas the Bolt has a self buff, which is Sakura Dark Lineage's other form. And as I mentioned, Wild Rose Furion. So hopefully you kind of start to see some overlap. Tidebringer Kaito has Spirit and Dragon, so really, really nice. Bulwark has Spirit and Bird, really, really nice. Ibarra has like self buffs for pretty much everything. Celeste is Dragon and Bird. Like there are people who kind of fall into multiple categories, and so it's good to like know, okay, I can kind of maybe take some of these units. But maybe another layer to look at is the element supports. So we know the boss is weak to water, wind, light, and ice. We assume that water is the main weakness because Ong is a water unit and is this unit's Clash of Wills unit. So we assume water is the big one. Wind is probably the other good element to use, but wind is not a great element. And then light and ice were last month. And those are now going to be like the kind of like sub safe elements, but like not good ones to go after. So we'll go ahead and talk about them anyway. Let's start with water. So Kaito is a water damage dealer. He does water imperil. He has a water imperil field. He does weapon imperils, 90 breaks. Kaito is great because he's water unit and he has 2 killers. So Kaito probably needs to be on your team. If you don't have Kaito, maybe consider bringing Metza, the newest unit who's going to have Focus Plus. And water fields and stuff like that. But you could also look at Whimsical Winter. Tiana has a weak water amp for the party. Cacteria, decent breaks and water damage, morale damage too. Shui Yi is a water damage dealer that has some morale stuff that they added within the last couple of years. Added some morale stuff for her. The free Addison Ray unit is a water user. Volca NVA. Lord of the Seas Nicole, Songstress Yuna, Laguna, Lulu, Starlight Elena, Avalanche Tifa, Full Moon Carton, Dragon Lord Roos. Selfie, when you use Siren, has a field. Guardian of the Underworld Chao, big field support. Not as good as Ong, but is also good. And has a 100% rolling amp for the party. And just good damage in general. Dark Dragon Buffon is a free unit that you can get from Dark Visions. So if you're looking for kind of free options, he's there. Not the best unit, but he's there. Denial of Focus Vanille and Loving Father Zaz. I need to fix that. Kind of fields that work together. And we already mentioned Metza, and Red Mage Ingus is on there as well. So lots of options for, you can't see Red Mage Ingus, there he is. Lots of options for wind fields and wind support and wind imperils or water as well is the main thing we're talking about. For wind, you got fewer options. Wings of Midnight Malphasie has, rolling amp for the party and imperil field. Bulwark has, a reasonable amp for the whole party. Mid has an amp field. Avon has an imperil field. Little Summoner Aiko has an imperil field and some wind damage. Also is going to have focus. Disciple of Avon Leona has an amp field and amps for the party. Neovision's Ferris has wind damage and an amp field. Emperor of Palamecia is a big wind breaker. Neovision's Ellie has a field. Deuce, Trey, Sky, Samurai Chizuru, all decent wind damage dealers. And Red Mage Ingus again has a field. So those are kind of like our main wind and water damage or support units that you might be thinking about. And then the ones from last month are still there. So like Tsukiko, Fina, Ling, Aerith, Yuna, Quistis, etc. It's all there. But these are units that you probably don't want to bring unless you're bringing them just for focus or something else that you might be able to squeeze them together because they bring something else. But maybe you're not bringing them for you're maybe not building a light team for this Clash of Wills because light's probably not going to be a safe element or a good element. Same with ice. But you might still bring, some of these units because they have focus plus or something like that, like all the Final Fantasy 15 units, which we'll talk about in just a second. So that's where I would start is, water units or wind units that also kind of do the killers that you want, but we still need to deal with the stuff that the fight does. So we know the fight does mainly physical and hybrid attacks. So talking about some tanks that you might be able to bring, maybe you want to bring Esther again. Maybe you want to bring Runda. Runda is a season 4 unit, so Runda has focus as well as just being a good unit, and he's free, so you got him at EX3. That's an easy win. But maybe, Lilith could be an option here because Lilith does morale damage. Lilith also heals the party. Lilith also can chain. Lilith can do a lot of things for you, so maybe she would do well here. Bahimi as well, maybe do something for you. Fills morale every turn, can tank, does some status ailment and resistance and stuff like that. But maybe you want to bring somebody who's not, for Clash of Wills, kind of like Runda, but maybe you want to bring somebody different and bring somebody who can do some damage too. Neovision's Jekt, the Fabled Guardian, does water damage and, also has some water resistance, which could be useful. He's going to have focus. Lots of ways you can maybe bring some physical tanks into the fight. As far as the elemental resistances, we know the boss does fire, water, wind, and light damage. Melissa and Sylvie are honestly the best ways to get Omni elemental resistance for the party. Roberta Ignitos, they do a big fire resist buff. Same with Whimsical Winter Tiana, does fire and water and wind. Fable Guardian of the Underworld Chow and Fable Guardian Jekt, they do bar Waterja. So like they can do water, but like not a whole lot else. So like maybe you want to stick to like Melissa and Sylvie. Same thing for status ailments. Melissa, Sylvie, Abigail can do Veil, but you don't really need a magic tank on this fight. Kresnik, but you don't really need a healer on this fight. Well, maybe. They did say the healing is reduced, so maybe you need a big healer like Kresnik. And then King Bahimi can do the status ailments as well. As far as the Vertex units, these are the units that have skills that are going to get you out of Mania mode. We know that Esther and Mireille have Vertex units. We know that Ong is going to have a Vertex skill. And then every Clash of Wills tagged unit is going to have a Vertex ability as well. So like this is just going to been blown wide open as far as like petting somebody that's going to do a Vertex ability, because most of your team's probably going to be Clash of Wills units as it is. You're going to be able to get yourself out of Mania mode. That's not going to be a problem. The problem is maybe filling your gauge, but they made that a little easier too. So the units that have the Focus Plus ability are Fastest Man Setzer, Magical Markswoman, Physalis, Metza, True King Noctis, Regis, Prompto, Ignis, Gladiolus, and then the upcoming collection of mana units are all going to have Focus Plus. So that's going to be like the big fill. But what about the lesser category? So the ones that just do like regular focus is every Final Fantasy series, Final Fantasy Brave Exvius Season 1 through 4, Another World, Anniversary JP, and Rewards. So missing from that is Bonds, Gathering, and things like that. But sometimes units fall under multiple categories, so we're going to see how that can play off for us a little bit later. Before I show you some teams, just to kind of give you some sense of who helped us out tonight, we putting our list together was Azamar, Harvey Tudent, Sketch 262, Nami Nom Nom, MK Ultra, Jonathan King 1991, and Vito 10,000. Thank you guys for your support and your contributions to our list and hanging out in Twitch. It means a lot to me, and we will see. Hopefully, I'll see all of you guys back for Thursday when we pull for Ong, because I think I am probably going to pull for Ong at this point. I do want to see the data mine. I'm a little curious, and you'll see why I'm a little curious in just a second. But let's take a look at some teams that I've put together that are going to maybe help us get where we need to go. So I'm going to go to Home and scroll down to Clash of Wills, Another in the Vortex, and to look at some teams. So this is the first team that I've got put together, and I'm going to talk about it and then also talk about some sample swaps and things like that. So you'll notice that I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger on the screen for you. See if we make that a little bigger. Kind of hard to see, but I can do better. Hold on. Nope. I've got 3 different ways of stretching it out. Are any of them working? Yeah, sorry. None of them are really good. I didn't plan for this. We'll just go with this one. So the first person here we've got is Lilith. So in this case, Lilith is our tank. She's doing healing duty for us, and doing some damage, hopefully, but probably not very much. She's not gonna be our main damage, but she's doing like healing duty and tanking. And then we've got Hyo here. Hyo and Panthera Ultimus. They are interesting, right? So if you look at Hyo and Panthera Ultimus categories, they are season 2. So that means they get a focus ability, and they are Clash of Wills. That means they get a Vertex ability. So Hyo is an example of somebody who's going to be able to do good damage for us, bring a Vertex skill if we need one, and also be able to fill the focus gauge for us. He's not a water unit. He's not a wind unit, but he's going to be able to be imbued by our other units to have a really nice damage, I hope. I'm really hoping for it because he seems to fit well on my party, and he's just here to be doing damage, honestly. A lot of his other utility is not going to be kind of filling in that well because, like, we're not using his big amps, but we're relying on other people. So I'll probably give him ways of like breaking resistances and things like that to try and fill morale and things like that. This team assumes that we are pulling for Ong, so here's Ong, and I will need to pull him to EX2 for this party, which is, we'll see how that goes. But Ong will be doing leading the party. We'll make him the leader. And then Ong will be doing like his big amp field and like bow stuff and doing damage. Kaito's here for breaks and killers, honestly, and water support. Chow is here for 100% rolling water amp and killers and just doing good damage. And then Malphasy is here for bird killer. So here's where I said, depending on what Ong has, this team might change. If Ong has bird killer in his kit, we can ditch Malphasy, and we will then put in Melissa. So with Melissa on the party, we've got our elemental resistances covered. We've got our status ailment immunities covered. We've got a lot of things. And I honestly think this is a better team, but it's missing bird killer unless Ong has bird killer. Now, let's say I need Melissa for all the things that she does, but Ong doesn't have bird killer. Well, the card that's on Ong's step up has bird killer on it. Melissa could wear that card and give bird killer to whoever needs it with that card. And maybe it'll be a little better. Like, it'll be okay, maybe. But I'm really just hoping that Ong has bird killer for the party. I mean, he does have the buffer tag, and I'm hoping that one of those buffs is a bird killer buff for the party. And maybe he only has a self buff. If he only has a self buff, Melissa could give bird killer to Hyo. And now we've got Ong and Hyo working together with bird killer, and everybody else just kind of has spirit and dragon, and it'll be okay. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. This is the main idea. Now, what if we have this team here, but we're not generating enough focus fast enough to get out of mania mode? Well, that's where I'm going to swap out Lilith, and I can put in Runda. So Runda would not fall under Ong's leader skill, but I could then at that point maybe consider, making Hyo the leader or Chow the leader or something like that, and then letting somebody else lead the party, which is not really ideal. I would rather have Ong because Ong's going to do all Clash of Wills. But if Runda's not bulky enough, then we got to do what we got to do. But I think Runda would probably be okay. And Runda will have focus, Hyo will have focus, and we have double people focusing, and it'll be, filling up the gauge faster. So that's kind of like the first idea that I have for a team. I'm looking forward to this team working, but like I said, it does involve me pulling Ong, and I do plan to. So we'll see how that goes. I want to show you another example of a team that I came up with, though, that I think might work okay, and that is this one. So in this example, we're focusing on wind. So notice Ong is not even on this party, and we've got some Clash of Wills units and some wind damage dealers, but we're keeping Kaito, and we're keeping Melissa. In this instance, we've got Kaito for Spirit and Dragon. We've got Malphasy for Bird and for Wind support. She's got the Imperil Field and the Rolling Wind Amp and stuff like that. We've got Sky for damage. We've got Lightning for damage and being a leader. And then we've got, same. We're back to having Lilith tanking. I can never remember Lilith's name. You ever notice that? Lilith is the one that I always forget. And then Melissa here for the Melissa support. So this is just another example of like possibility of like a win team. If you've got mid or a Setzer, you'd want to put them in instead of Sky probably, and to have the double focus thing. And then you'd also have an amplify field as well. That way you can amplify and imperil at the same time, and that would probably go better for you. There you have it. So 2 teams that I'm thinking could work. I'm probably going to start with this one, even though it involves me pulling for Ong. But, I think it's going to be okay. I think Ong's going to be a good investment for a unit based on what we've seen so far. Really hoping to get Bird Killer in the kit, though, on Thursday. So we'll see how that goes. As far as the news goes, we didn't really get a whole lot of new information about Ong that we didn't already know, other than confirming that he's an SLB unit. We do get to see the banner structure, though. We know that there's this Ong Vision card. We know that if you get the card and then continue on to Pity, it's going to cost you about 50k. I personally think that the units that are on the Allied Step Up, I kind of joked about it on the beige carpet, that if Irvin was there, like, it would be bad. I do need one more Irvin for EX3, and like, honestly, that could fit really well on my team. Irvin could be another focus unit at EX3. I also don't mind getting more Galoof because I only have EX1. I don't mind getting more Locke because I only have EX2, and Roos I only have EX2 or EX1. So like, all the this is another example of like, I want all the units that are on this banner, so it's a safe bet for me to pull. I don't think this is as good as the Hyo and Veritas of the Frost banner, but I still feel like this is pretty solid. Normal goodies along the way, VIP coins and stuff like that. So that's cool. And then here's Ong, nothing really new here to talk about. Let's take a quick look at this vision card, though. So here's Ong's vision card, which we already knew about from the live stream. And then here's the new one. Attack and magic 60%, boost physical and magic damage against birds and dragons. Then sun piercing shot, boost physical and magic damage against birds for 1 ally and activate sun piercing shot next turn. This is the rolling amp bird killer. And then attack and magic 500. So like, yeah, you're losing some stats. It's a big drop in stats, which could be a big drop in damage, but you're putting this probably on a support unit for this ability right here. Like, if I put this on Melissa, I don't care that she doesn't have good stats anymore. She's mainly just wearing this just to give somebody else bird killer, which is potentially pretty cool. So I'm probably going to go for the card as well, because this role plays into my strategy for like having bird killer on my party. And bird's really rare. Like, bird is one of the hardest ones to gear for. I don't know if you saw our list comparing like spirit and dragon and bird. It's hard to put together a list of good bird killer options for the party. So like, having this card would be a good one to add to your arsenal of cards. So I'm currently planning on doing the card step up and then going to Pity for Ong. Probably even if he doesn't have bird killer in his kit, but I really hope he does. And there you go. So that's probably it for right now. I'm gonna roll out of here, and hopefully the list is helpful for you. The list of units that we put together, and I'm gonna put the screenshot of the list in the comments and the description. I'm gonna have all that available for you once this video goes up. So in the meantime, be good to each other. Take care. We'll see you on Thursday, where I plan to pull for the unit live on Twitch in the evening. So until then, be well rested and well fed and warm and dry and clean and all those things. And we will see you on Thursday.